Hi and welcome to the Geek Legion of Doom. This is a B-movie review and I'll be having a look at the Minotaur today. Made in 2006 and starring Tom Hardy. Yes, Tom Hardy, a starring vehicle for Bane himself. So this is a sci-fi original film made for TV, and I have to say this is one of the better looking made for TV films that I've seen. It has a fairly sort of basic storyline. Ultimately, we're shown in a prologue that many years ago in this kind of like mythical land or whatever, there's a sort of priestess queen, and they kind of worship this bull god, but the people are sort of becoming restless with just worshipping sort of statues and things like that, and they want an actual living god ultimately. And so through sort of nefarious means, sort of dark magic and actually bestiality, although you don't actually see that, although it's implied, a woman, basically the priestess queen, manages to give birth to a human bull hybrid, and thus it grows up into the Minotaur. However, there's the kind of this ruling class ultimately have to sort of have a bit of a secret and have to sort of sacrifice 8 youths every, I think, 3 years to keep the gods happy and whatnot. Cut to the sort of like the actual film sort of timeline, and you've got a small village with its inhabitants. You've got Tom Hardy's there, and he's kind of this like son of like the chieftain, played by Rutger Hauer in a very small role, and they kind of know that every sort of 3 years or so, the sort of soldiers come and try and take 8 people to get sacrificed. Tom Hardy's character is kind of protected because he's the chieftain's son, although his sort of girlfriend was taken the last time, and he's told by this sort of leper sort of witch woman who lives in the mountains that his girlfriend is actually still alive, and he just sort of just takes her word for it with no actual proof, and decides to sort of replace one of the people who gets picked on this sort of latest sacrificial bit and kind of go along with them. When he gets to this sort of city called Minos, which is where they sort of they hit the Minotaur underground in this kind of labyrinth, he is sort of his plan is ultimately to try and kill the Minotaur and rescue his sort of girlfriend. Now there you've got the actual Minos is ruled by this kind of like king played by Tony Todd, who is way overacting and campy in this role, and his sister, who he has a bit of an incestual desire for, who is played by I'm not sure the actress's name, but she's incredibly beautiful, I have to say. And she sort of feels like an attraction to Tom Hardy's character. Ultimately, the 8 people that are picked, one of them being Tom Hardy, are thrown into the maze, and they essentially left to die. Now this princess has other ideas, and she sort of ultimately wants to destroy her brother and kill the Minotaur. So she sneaks in to try and help Tom Hardy and the rest of the sort of survivors. When they're in the maze, they encounter another survivor from like the previous visit, and do sort of a cat and mouse game between the Minotaur and these survivors. And obviously, there's a lot of it, a lot of impaling going on, a lot of sort of gory deaths and things like that. The actual Minotaur itself, now in sort of when you think of a Minotaur, ultimately you think of like a big bloke with like a bull's head, but this one is actually the actual Minotaur itself is more or less just a sort of huge. It looks like an undead bull, I have to say. It's not really any type of human, I have to say. It just looks like this kind of like huge bull with like massive horns, and looks like it's kind of rotting. So it's an interesting choice in regards to the actual creature. Now the creature itself is a mixture of practical effects and CGI. And I've got to say the effects aren't too bad on it. Even the CGI, I don't ever think it's like that's so obviously crappy CGI like you do in some of these TV films. I'm not saying it's like the best special effects I've ever seen, but it was a decent enough job for this sort of level of budget of film. And because it's relatively all sort of in these caves and stuff. They don't need to have a lot of expensive sets, I suppose. The palace looks quite lavish when you sort of the interiors of that. But generally speaking, the majority of the film takes place within this labyrinth, which is basically just a series of caves. So I guess the effects went on the Minotaur. So it's a relatively basic film. It almost seems like it should be part of another film almost. I don't think the Minotaur itself is a particularly strong enough monster to carry an entire film, if I'm completely honest. And it's ultimately defeated in the end, surprise, and there's quite there's a little bit of a twist in regards to the motivations of what Tom Hardy's doing there. But to be honest with you, it was neither here nor there. It didn't really make a lot of difference to the actual to the plot of the film, I didn't think. Overall, it was it's okay. It was I don't think it was anything special. I think it kind of reminded me a little bit of like the sort of like a very cheap version of the sort of Clash of the Titans films. Now it isn't particularly faithful to the sort of the Greek legends of the Minotaur and whatnot. This is really just a take on that, or a variation on the tale of a Minotaur story. So I wouldn't be expecting a retelling of this sort of classic Minotaur in the Labyrinth tale, because it's not really that at all, to be honest. But it's an okay bit of time waste. I think the monster effects are quite good. Don't really see that many Minotaurs on the screen, to be honest. So it's an interesting, different type of movie. And the acting, as I say, is a kind of, it ranges from okay to very, very campy. So not bad. I would give this one a 4.5 out of 10. Have you seen it? Let me know what you think, and I look forward to seeing you next time. See you later.